Namaste and welcome everybody for another episode of Rooted in Roaming, where we talk about issues that affects us, the Indian American community. And today I'm joined by Neero Patelji and Amita Mittalji, and we are honored to have Sanjyot Dunung.
Yes.
I'm sorry if I butchered your name.
No, not
Um,
at all. Perfect.
and she's a candidate in the Illinois 8th District for congressional district. So, welcome, Sanjyot ji.
Thank
Namaste.
you. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to all of you. And I look forward to our conversation. Lots going on.
All right. So, you tell us about yourself. So, what brought you into politics? What inspired you into politics? And a little bit about your background in family, whatever else you want to share with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for this opportunity. I really have enjoyed talking to everybody. So I am calling in from Des Plaines, Illinois. It's where I came first as a immigrant child at the age of 6 with my parents. As so many Indians, we came via England from India. I was born in Mumbai, so I have Maharashtrian roots. I speak Marathi for all of those who enjoy that. I grew up here, went to all my schooling. I went to Northwestern and then on to did my MBA at the Thunderbird Global School of Management and then moved about. And I am today a small business owner. I have an education technology company. I'm a military mom, proud military mom, 3 boys. My youngest is in the Air Force. And I took care of my aging and disabled parents. So I really understand a lot of the issues that folks in our community do, particularly those who are dealing with disabled family members. I also served on President Biden's foreign policy working groups, helping to strengthen small businesses, create jobs, and protect economic and national security. And I continue to serve on the National Small Business Association, nonpartisan, largest nonpartisan 66,000 member business association focused on sensible common sense policies in DC, and the Truman Center for National Policy, which is about principled foreign policy. And I might argue that we are not currently in a moment of that. So I come steeped with federal policy expertise, current, I might add, I'm the only one in the race with that, but also are rooted in our family values of our community and very much our culture. And I got into this race because, like so many people, I've been involved in Democratic politics for the last 7 years nationally, but I was seeing what was happening on both sides of the aisle and very frustrated with the lack of common sense solutions. We have big problems, but we also can access those solutions. So I'm here in this race because I'm a workhorse, not a show horse. I'm focused on delivering those solutions and happy to get into some of those as we have a conversation.
Wonderful.
So Sanjot, what inspired you to enter in the electoral politics? Like, is there any movement that happened that today I'm deciding that now I will go for the Congress and I have to get elected and do something? So what inspired you to get into it?
So for the last 7 years, I have been involved. And I was, when you're on either side, Democrat or Republican, there's always conversations about issues, priorities, communications. And certainly, I think there were things I wish we could have done better, both as Democrats and as a country. And I got into this race. I've known Raja for a number of years. I saw what he did. One of his most signature successes was the TikTok bill. And I know that we can do good things on a bipartisan fashion when we put our minds to it. And really, I wanted to make sure I took advantage of the opportunity. For the last 10 years, I've spent much of my time back in my hometown, really taking care of my parents, but also being rooted back in the community, understanding the issues. And I was seeing what people were concerned about. People were concerned about affordability. But when I talk about affordability, they were really focused on our property taxes, how to make sure that they could put their kids through college, how they could take care of childcare, health care, disabled care, and elder care. So I know that there are a number of solutions, and that's why I got in there. And then the last area where I'm very passionate about is we need to deliver pro-legal immigration reform once and for all. And I'm very frustrated that for the last 20 years, both parties have kicked the can down the road. And so I'm in this race to say we can deliver it. It's a deliverable, solvable problem. Everyone should have access to faster and humane pathways to legal citizenship, but let's make sure everyone's playing by the same rules. And we want to make those rules very easy, transparent, and achievable.
I just use the word affordability,
Yeah.
right? And we are in this conflict there with Iran and the oil pressure, and we already see at the pump 20% increase in the fuel cost. What federal actions you see that would prioritize this question of affordability at the consumer level, like not taxes and that's legislative level, then would help the consumer in the end. But what immediate actions can be taken at the grocery store from the Congress side?
So there are a couple of different things. So I'll separate them. One is certainly the shocks from the Iran military action war. I know that everybody has to parse through those wars, but it's really a war. It was what we're really seeing now, not necessarily acted through with a full understanding of the consequences. I understand the administration saw an opportunity. They thought they would take it with Israel. I disagree that that was the right, I don't think that was the right action at this moment, because there are real consequences of people's lives, consequences, as you've said, to the disruptions of supply chains and oil and gas. And we had not planned for that. And it is definitely going to be hitting people in their pocketbooks at their gas pumps. This war is already costing us $1 billion a day in just actual cost structure. So what actions can people take? I think legislatively as well as at the state level, there are layers of taxes, right? You have your state, federal. So understanding you could have a gas tax freeze for a short time, you could take a couple of immediate steps. I think the real thing is that Congress has to just be asked for permission for this war within 60 days of that action. And I think you're going to see a Congress bipartisan not give it to this administration. So by cutting off the funds for the war, I think you're going to automatically see that some of the consequences are going to have to be dealt with. You'll probably then start to see some reduction in oil prices and some of the other things. But on affordability of food, and affordability of housing, that's a different question a little bit. So I'm going to move to a different set of calculations. One of the things that I've been working on is how we take a look to see who gets help, whether it's childcare, whether it's SNAP, whether it's your Social Security, whether it's your healthcare subsidies. They're all based on a formula of income and poverty thresholds that date back to 1963. That formula back then assumed that food prices were the most important part of your budget. Well, fast forward to 2026, the most important part of your budget is actually housing, it's healthcare and childcare. So we need to update this formula. By updating the formula, we will actually be able to make sure that people are getting the resources that they need to be able to live in 2026. So my plan actually includes introducing legislation to update those formulas and make sure we're actually accounting for 2026 costs.
Thank you. That was something I've never heard any politician talk about. Because
I'm a policy wonk, so I'll tell you that.
I know that's a really, really good answer, because you hit the nail on the head with a lot of scams that are happening because of the concentration on the grocery store checkout cards, which resulting in scam versus taking care of the real issues. Right. A lot of these people don't have any real issues, and that's ending in scams. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I will say that I'm an educator and a social scientist. I sort of operated the convergence of business, education, technology, culture, and social science and how it impacts our society. I know that was a mouthful, but my team always says make life simple. But I think that we have complicated problems, and it's okay to have experts who know how to work on this stuff. And so one of the things, like a doctor, you don't just want a Band-Aid, you want to go to the root cause of your illness. And societally, we have some financial illnesses. We have some structural illnesses, and we need to do more than just have sound bites and people who are doing performative language. We need to actually figure out how to fix those. So that's where I come from in terms of introducing a new approach to running for this race and hopefully governing.
So,
That's wonderful. I have a, you already talked about immigration and all, just briefly mentioned it. But something related to immigration is the question of who should be allowed to vote, right? I know there are laws and all that, but there's a fight in along the aisle here about this issue. That do you think people should have proof of citizenship to register to vote? What is your opinion on that?
Okay, so there's a couple of different things. I absolutely think that only citizens should vote. So let's assume that we're going to keep the Constitution as is, and we can get back to the immigration. The SAVE Act, which is what you're referring to,
Yes.
here's the interesting thing. The people who actually are more likely to have proof of citizenship are actually immigrants because you've gone through this process. You have a passport. You are more likely. I'll tell you a little story. I was actually getting my own driver's license updated a few months ago here in Illinois. And I went in and I could overhear a gentleman who was born and raised, and he must have been in his late 60s, born and raised not too far from Chicago. And he was arguing with the person at the teller. He said, I don't have a birth certificate. I don't know where one is. I never traveled. I don't have a passport. So, ironically, a SAVE Act would actually hurt some of the very Americans they think they're protecting. So, we need to be thinking through what is it that we're trying to do? We are trying to make sure that people who are eligible to vote, vote. Very simple. And in most cases, the amount of fraud is negligible across the country. We have had challenges at every major presidential election. And even in red and blue states, we've found that fraud is negligible. So the SAVE Act is a redundant act that isn't necessary. The other group of people that it penalizes, and I'm deeply concerned because I've spent my life's work volunteering and focusing on boards, are women. Women who have changed their name due to marriage will no longer have the same legal paperwork to be able to prove citizenship, to be able to prove where they were born. So let's not penalize good, hardworking Americans who want to do their civic duty. A driver's license, a passport, all the forms that we have are more than sufficient to achieve the goal.
great. So, Sanjyot, you are coming from the business background,
I am.
and there is a lot of small businesses in the district are struggling. The interest rate went all the way for business interest rate. Small business went high up to almost 10%
Yeah.
because there is a prime plus 2%, 2.5% what bank are charging. So they are nowhere less than 9% anywhere, and it's very hard to the businesses to survive. Plus, the businesses, the SBA limits are the $5 million for the small businesses. And today, in $5 million, if you want to get in the decent size of small businesses, you don't get anything because the price are hike. And other side, uh, many prices are going up of the cost of the food, cost of the goods are going up because of the tariff and many other stuff. So how you see yourself to giving the some kind of solution to the district, to the state, to the nation?
Thank you. I very much appreciate that question. You're right. I am a small business. I'm an entrepreneur. As I was saying before we got on, my company won Fast Company's Most Innovative, Small and Mighty, and I really do wear that badge with honor. So I'm very passionate about strengthening small businesses. I sit on the National Small Business Association, nonpartisan business advocacy, really focusing. So the access to capital, which is what you've referred to, and the cost of capital is something that I'm deeply focused on. One of the ideas that I have, and we're working on figuring out a plan for, is we saw through COVID that the federal government has the capacity to lend directly to small businesses. We know what we are now capable of doing. And is that a better way to do things? And let me ask you, and let me sort of throw out some of the rationale. one of the things that whenever I'm in talking to lenders, whenever I'm in talking to small businesses, the SBA guarantees a lender 90%, and the lender is on the hook for the other 10%. Well, most lenders tell me, listen, we want to do business with small businesses, but the 10% risk is not worth the reward for us. So what happens? They don't do enough small businesses, or they ask for too much collateral. And if you are a non physical business, if you're a digital business, a tech business, you don't have the kind of collateral that most lenders are looking for. So we need to change that relationship. We need to understand how can we support our small businesses without burdening the equation. I'd like to see some direct facilities go directly to small businesses like we did with COVID that are marked to prime rather than with a plus rate that many lenders do. I'd also like to make sure the collateral is reasonable and not burdensome. We want small businesses to thrive. We definitely don't want waste and we don't want fraud. So I know that we need to take a look at those programs to root that out. But you might have 5 or 10%. We can root that out with better audit procedures. But let's see if we can increase the capacity. I'll also say for a lot of people, they hear the word small business and they don't really know what we're talking about. They think that it's the small diner on the corner street that they go to. And I love my diner, by the way. So, yes, it's the diner, but it's also every individual contractor, all the way to, by DoD definitions, a small manufacturer is $70 million if you're a supplier to DoD, Department of Defense. So we have a large gamut of businesses that are doing terrific work in their local communities. We have 20,000 in my district, by the way. In our communities, our state and nationally, let's strengthen them. Let's also level the playing field. I don't like seeing small businesses disadvantaged versus the larger businesses. There's a number of policies on that. So we're always keeping an eye out on making sure that small businesses are not paying the burden for bad policies, supply chain disruptions, cost of capital, and just overregulation.
Thank you.
I want to switch to another issue of H-1B.
Yeah.
And I've seen it grow. And there was an urgent need back in '98 for Y2K situation. We were bringing in H-1Bs in the U.S. and, in 3-4 years, those engineers who came over helped with Fortran and COBOL language to fix the Y2K issue. They got their citizenship, they're great. And then the boom in the software tech industry happened. And then we have now upwards of 75 to 80,000 H1s coming to US, and then they're in line to get their green card or citizenship. And then there are a lot of fraud happening within the H-1B industry, where there are people just open fake company and bringing in friends and families on H1s. When it's directed towards the Indian community as a whole, when there's a specific issue, maybe related to fraud, maybe related to immigration, how do you see it? You're a policy person. I see that very clearly. Thank you. But how do you see a solution for this stigma that is being attached to our community?
Yeah, very much so. So first off, I hear about this all the time. I've been passionate about immigration for a long time because it's fixable. We do, as I said earlier, want everybody to play by those same rules. But the rules have become burdensome. They've also become really just cumbersome. One of the things that we know how to do is really make sure that we fast forward the process. So I have a plan. I'm supportive of the Dignity Act, which is bipartisan. Let's get that passed. Let's make sure that we make it easy for people to apply for a visa and status in country before they come, so we don't have the border issues. We want to make sure we have a safe border. I'm also in support of the Dreamers Act, which some Indians also benefit from. Dreamers, how you came here, we need to give everybody that amnesty. And I really do believe that Dreamers should no longer be a group of people, but they should be your everyday neighbors and citizens. And the fact that they're not after 12 years or 14 years of it being passed is just a shame on both parties. So let's get those two bills passed. That's the first thing. The other is on immigration, there's a number of areas. I have a plan to actually introduce more judges and caseworkers and technology to process visas and green cards faster. Nobody should be waiting 10 years for a green card. Nobody should be waiting 10 years or more for some of these legal visa status. We can get rid of the backlog. I've heard estimates, if we can apply technology and resources, to down to 18 to 24 months. Get rid of the backlog of 6 to 10 million people who are waiting. They're already here paying taxes, they're working, their kids are going to school, they're part of the fabric of our community. They are not taking jobs from anyone else because they're already here working. So let's take care of that group. Now let's talk for a moment about H-1Bs. The H-1B program was intended to do just as you said, to bring over temporary workers for a year or two, enable them to work here, and then, of course, go back to their country. 70% of them are Indian or Asians, South Asians. It did get abused by some companies who saw that as a form of cheaper labor. And we need to acknowledge that it also put a lot of workers, Indian workers, at a disadvantage. If we give the H-1B what it was intended to be, a 2-year program, and then either you return back to your country or you apply for a permanent visa, which will be provided within 6 months, according to my plan, we will be able to then make sure that H-1Bs are not this sort of permanent in between limbo status that so many workers find themselves. The backlash has come to those. The president has on a number of occasions, and I get why so many people voted for him. He asked a lot of the right questions. I just disagree with all of his solutions. Shutting off these programs overnight, leaving people in country or here without interview access, leaving them without limbo of knowing, adding $100,000 fee also is burdensome to a small business. So who have you advantaged? You've advantaged the Microsofts and the Googles. And who have you disadvantaged? The small businesses that may want to have workers. So let's, again, level that playing field. $100,000 fee does not level that playing field. But I think that it's really about coming together and adding some bipartisan solutions, faster processes, more judges, caseworkers, and use technology to be able to make sure those pathways are faster.
Yes, related to H-1B visa issue is also the kind of hate that our community has experienced over time. Especially about lots of online hate for sure, and directed against Indian in general and Hindus in particular. There are a lot of hate going on. How do you see this? How do you see this resolved also is my question.
Absolutely. So let me just start by saying I am endorsed by Hindu American PAC. I'm endorsed by Vote Common Good, which are Democratic-leaning Christians. And I point that out because I am a champion for secular roots of our country and making sure that every religion has a pathway to make sure that they can practice their religion freely and safely. We want no government interference in religion. So I'm really very passionate about our secular roots. But let's now talk about the hate. We do have hate legislation. We should be using it. We need to be out integrating with our communities to make sure, and a lot of that comes with community programs, community outreach. But there's another place that I intend to focus on legislatively, and that is Section 230. Section 230, if you're familiar with it, is a 1990s policy legislation which allowed tech companies, in essence, no liability for the content that flows through their platform. At that point, when it was first introduced, the idea was simply that Google and everybody else, they were very early and we needed to nurture their innovation. Well, fast forward, they are now creating content with their algorithms and with AI. They are actually promoting TikTok, for example, Meta with Facebook and Instagram through their algorithms, a lot of this hate speech. And so as somebody who is a private sector solutions-oriented person, I think that the large companies the big tech need to be held accountable. So let's repeal, let's modify Section 230 so that they are accountable for what flows through their platform. I can guarantee you that they will be far more likely to monitor the content, the hate speech, and really coming after the Asian community, which deeply concerns me. So again, let's go to the root causes, because we have to stop where that hate speech is coming from online and it's being given a free pass, and making sure that those tech platforms are held accountable with liability. I'll just say I have a media company and I'm also an author. I've written 17 business books. If I were to publish something that was inflammatory or slanderous, I could be sued. And yet you can't sue Meta and you can't sue Google. Why not? That's not right. And so we need to understand that big tech has gotten too far. We want them to be innovative, but we want them to have common sense, safe guardrails, which ensures that they are not promoting hate, they are not creating chaos and division, and that they are responsible for what flows through their platforms, whether it's AI driven or whether it's through their algorithms.
But the 230 that you mentioned, a lot of people also worry about First Amendment. How do you unpack that?
Well, it's 230, repealing 230 doesn't affect the First Amendment. The First Amendment is actually protected. What 230 does is gives a liability shield to the big companies. My whole point is take away the liability shield. They're too big to need it. Let the First Amendment actually procure. So if people have a difference of opinion, if they wish to hold those big tech companies accountable, there are legal mechanisms to do that. Let those happen. We absolutely do not want government telling those big tech companies what to do. And that is not at all what 230 is about. So we want to make sure that everybody has the right to free speech. I champion our First Amendment rights, but we also don't think that big tech, whose combined stock value is in the trillions, they don't need our liability shield anymore. They need to be held accountable for the progress of our communities, our family, and our country.
Thank you.
Great. So Sanjyot, you say you are the change candidate. You are the one who want to bring the change, a lot of changes. Your change. What kind of change you are looking for on the eight district people life and eight district citizens, and also state of Illinois and the nationwide.
I think the change that I'm bringing is really just a mindset approach, common sense. One of the first things that I asked, and we have a very extensive program in engaging with voters across the cultural divide. So, we are a really robust multicultural immigrant community, Eastern European, Asian, African. We have people from just about everywhere. So, really making sure that I'm talking to all of them, which I have been, and I've had the pleasure of knowing many people over the years. But the change that they're looking for, that they ask me about, is will you be ideologically pure? And the answer is no. I want to make sure that the answers that I'm providing and the solutions we're focused on are best for the district. It's not about voting strict party lines. I think people are tired of that. They want to know that you can build bridges, which, by the way, I've done my entire professional career. Can you work with other people? Can you listen to other people, hear different perspectives, find common ground? And if we start to move past our rigid sort of identities, we actually will find that we're more focused on the same things. Everybody wants their kids to do well. Everybody wants to stay healthy. They want to take care of their family. They want to be able to afford their life, their house today, perhaps take a vacation every year. So we actually agree on more than we disagree. And people want reduced rhetoric and they want to come back to working on solving these problems. That's the kind of common sense change that people are asking me about every single day.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to add and ask you that in the youth there's a lot of drugs abuse and also narcotics drugs has been much popular, and somehow it's getting into the youth hand very easily.
Right.
What kind of strict law enforcement you are planning to apply if you come in the Congress?
Absolutely. Listen, I'm a mom of three boys. I get this. And now that they're in their young adults, I've sort of gone through all of that, and knock on wood, they've all stayed safe and healthy and well adjusted. But I do know that there is a drug epidemic problem. We certainly need to reduce the fentanyl and other synthetic drugs coming into the country, but we also need to invest in our families and our communities. So there's a couple of ways that I want to do this. One is I have a plan to actually bring back money into our district. I believe in community centers. They may be rooted and alongside a faith-based one, or they may be independent, but community centers that bring everybody together, from young people to older citizens, because older citizens are dealing with a loneliness epidemic. That can actually help create some mentoring situations to reduce some of the drug and sort of the drug problem, and in terms of the addiction problems. I had a mom, my mother was a doctor in drug abuse, and she worked downtown Chicago back in her peak days before her disability took over. And methadone clinics. I saw firsthand the devastating impact as a young child of what Coke and some of these other drugs did to downtown Chicago whenever I would go with my mom to work. So I know the ugly side of what communities have to bear when people go into it. I also want to see a reduction in what has just become an epidemic in Illinois and other states of sort of the cannabis industry. I do believe that it can be a safe, regulated industry for medical purposes, but I think that easy access has also made it easy for children to get access to these gateway drugs, right? These are really gateway opportunities. So those are in many states called sin industries, right? Cannabis, having a cannabis outlet or a dispensary, is a sin industry in many states still. And I think we need to be very mindful to make sure that we are not having too many of them, and certainly not near schools, and certainly not near where children can have easy access. So there are layers of solutions that we need to look at. First is really making sure kids know about drug education in high schools and even in junior high, which most schools are very good at doing, but then making sure we keep it away from them, making sure that we are as strict on those gateway drugs as we are with alcohol, and making sure that kids do not have access to those early opportunities. And then the third is community centers and investing in making sure people have an alternative mechanisms of engaging together and creating that kind of community engagement.
Thank you.
Leading to that question, I want to give you an opportunity to maybe just do your sales pitch. So this is like, what is your number one priority
Right.
for the district, for the state, for the nation, for the Indian American community? So, like, 4 points. Just do your political elevator pitch.
Sure, absolutely. Although I think a lot of this is the elevator pitch that we've talked about. So, you asked a little earlier about why I got into this race, and my parents had really instilled in me the early foundations of service and hard work, but also in pride in America. There's a picture of my mother walking down Michigan Avenue. She, at the end of her life, had a rare form of muscular dystrophy. So it's a particularly poignant picture. But she's walking down Michigan Avenue at a July 4th parade, carrying the American flag, wearing a sari. And it is just the most beautiful picture of what the value of immigrants in America have brought. I always like to say we're all immigrants, whether you came 4 years ago or whether your ancestors came 400 years ago. Immigrants are America's secret sauce. It's what makes us innovative and hardworking. It is everything about America. But we need to make sure that we continue to provide that American dream going forward for the next generation, for my kids, my grandkids, your kids, and your grandkids, and everyone's. So what do we need to do that? So I have a 4-point platform that really focuses on that: freedom, protecting our freedoms, creating opportunity, ensuring dignity, and security. So let's make sure that we provide pathways of opportunity, whether it's a small business or an area that's particularly important to me, which is lifelong education. I have been focused on making sure that we strengthen our K through 12, but let's make sure that every child has an opportunity for internships, apprenticeships, and lifelong reskilling. Last year alone, we saw 12% of college grads, which I know impacts our South Asian community quite a bit, 12% of college grads without a job. They're being disrupted by AI. We need solutions, and I have a solution to make sure all of them have access to at least a 6-month internship so they get those early first skills and get professionally acclimated. And then the other is having seen my mother with her disability, I have a plan to make sure everybody has access to home-based care without having to prove they're destitute, whether it's a disability or whether they're aging. Age in home 20 to 25 hours to get help with a shower, to take care of medication, or any of those other things. How will we pay for it? We actually will be able to move some money from Medicaid. Right now, Medicaid, 66% of our Medicaid budget is nursing homes. We give people no options. We simply make them become destitute and push them there. Nursing homes are terrific for some people, but it's not the solution for all. We need to recognize that many more people want to live and age in their home. So let's move some of that budget back to Medicare. Let's make sure that they have home-based resources. And let's not penalize people, middle-class families, for having a little bit of savings. Let's not make people destitute in order to get access to resources. And then the last area, you've heard me be very passionate. I'm intending to deliver in my first 2 years. I'm happy to be held accountable to this, on delivering pro-legal immigration reform. We can do it. The bills are there. We just need the energy to push across the finish line. I have worked in DC. I know how to get things done. That makes me unique in this race. I'm the only one with current federal policy experience, as well as the family, the community, and the small business. And I know how to get things done on day one. I will add with saying that I know that we're just 2 days out. Our internal polling has me within 2 points of beating the former congresswoman, from 20 years ago. And while she was in service 20 years ago, and that's great, there hasn't been any policy work since then. And we know that we need new energy, new ideas, and new solutions. I'm that new leader bringing new ideas and new solutions. So I'm hoping the voters will be ready to turn the page, look for more common sense solutions, and let me deliver for everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that answer. As we come to the close of our conversation, I have 2 quick questions, and you can be quick as well. So you are going to be one congresswoman if the district sends you in, but the approval rating of the Congress has been historical low. So how are you going to affect all these changes that you are promising? That's number one. And also on the healthcare, we have seen recently that there is a lot of fraud, right? How can we? It's good to get those things, available for everyone, but how would you propose to put a stop at the frauds? So those are my 2 closing questions, and so just quick answer if you can, please.
Okay, quick answers, happy to. So let me start with the second question first: Medicare, healthcare, and fraud. Fully hear that. I recognize I'm talking to doctors and patients every single day. We all know that we need to fix our healthcare system. We all know there's fraud, and there are a number of areas that we really need to focus on. Doctors are unhappy, patients are unhappy. Perhaps the only people who are happy are the middle folks, the PBMs. We do want to do that. I have a working group already that is coming together. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I'm an expert on everything, but what I do is I bring, like in any small business owner, I bring people together who are experts, who are in the field, and we are working to identify ways through audits and solutions. So on the healthcare, I think there's an ongoing question mark about how we do it. What I don't think is the answer for everybody is Medicare for all is a option, but not the option. So I hear from everybody, they want choices. They don't want only one solution. That makes me different than about half of the competitors in my race. So we need to address it and we need to take a look at it, but it's an ongoing policy area that I'm looking to make sure we have the right solutions for that. Coming back to the idea that I'm 1 of 435, you're absolutely right. But I also already have a number of relationships. I'm endorsed by some of them. I'm endorsed by Aspire, which is all of the Asians in Congress. I have been supporting and working with a number of people in Congress who also have a reputation for being bipartisan. Susie Lee, for example, who has both endorsed me and is from Nevada. So I already know how to bridge build. And I also, because of the NSBA, the National Small Business Association, and Truman, have a number of relationships to be able to bring those coalitions. I will tell you, in DC, most people in Congress actually want to get something done. They really want to solve some of these problems. And we are caught in a chaotic moment where people feel the lack of courage. They're worried about coming back into office again. They're worried about being reprimanded. I think it takes a groundswell of people. We might actually create a common sense caucus, by the way, which will be bipartisan, which will get some of these solutions done. And three things that I'm very passionate about, that there are some bills, but one we will definitely be pushing: election campaign finance reform, making sure electoral college, we definitely want to take care of election reform. We need to get away with gerrymandering. It's a race to the bottom. Doesn't matter whether Texas does it, California, or any other state. It is destructive to our democracy. And the last area is term limits. Let's institute term limits for the House, for the Senate, and for the Supreme Court. I'm actually the only one in our race who's doing and saying that. We need to get out of the mindset that we're in this job forever. The idea should be there are a lot of great people, give them a chance, let them have their turn, and then move along and the next person. I come from the private sector. Nobody's in there. Nobody's a CEO forever, right? You are there for a while and then you move along. So I can have a discussion about whether the term limit is 8 years, 10, 12, or 18. I have people who are passionate about each of those numbers. Personally, I think 12 is the right number for all three offices, but I can be persuaded. The idea is, let's get out of the mindset that these people are in forever. And it will help to solve the first problem, which you asked, which is Congress doesn't do anything. Well, Congress doesn't do anything because most of them are worried about keeping their job. So all they do is fundraise. All they do is get out there and make sure that they can keep their job rather than actually doing their job. And that's where that's the change I'm bringing. I'm going to actually go there to do the job. I will practice term limits, even if it's not passed by them, but I am somebody who practices what I preach. But I think the time for term limits is now. I hear it everywhere in my district. And it may very well be a voter-inspired groundswell across the country that actually pushes that kind of a movement forward.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being here and talking to us and informing your electorate about your policy priorities and other things. So we appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
your son.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Take care.
Okay.